From the management, we have Mr. S.C. Mehta, Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Amitabh Bhargava, President and CFO, and Mr. Mahesh Girdhar, President Crop Nutrition Business, and Mr. Deepak Balwani, Head Investor Relations on the call. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the call to Mr. Mehta for opening remarks, post which we will open the floor for Q&A. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Mehta.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. Is my voice okay?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. So at the outset, my very warm and a bit belated best wishes for Diwali and the New Year to all of you. And I hope you and all your family members are staying safe and healthy. So I take pleasure in welcoming you all for the Q2 FY22 earnings call of Deepak Fertilizers. I hope you all had a chance to look at the financial statements and earnings presentation that have been uploaded so that we can have a meaningful conversation today. So at the outset, I'm very happy to share that since we met last, we have successfully raised 510 crores through our QIP. And what is more, it is the new set of investors are marquee long-term investors. And that is a clear testimony of the confidence that the long-term global investors have had on our operations and our growth strategy. As far as this quarter goes, despite a massive hike in many of our raw materials, our quarter has, withstood fairly well. And we have recorded a revenue growth of almost 28% over last year. And our EBITDA and net profit grew by about 10% and 16% compared to Q2 FY21. Now, as you know, we are performing in three different sectors. And if I might share from the sector perspective, that the first is where we, service the pharma specialty chemicals sector. And that has, shown a growth of 46% year on year in Q2 FY22. So in the nitric acid business, which is a part of the specialty chemical sector, we are seeing, that because of certain, I would say, curbs in production by the Chinese government, the demand for nitric acid has further strengthened for us. And we are expecting, prices also to remain pretty firm in Q3 onwards. Within the same pharma chemical sector, we have IPA, where we saw capacity utilization to be more than 100%, supported by good demand. But realizations were somewhat depressed due to the plunge in the alternate feedstock acetone. However, looking at all these aspects, the DGTR has recently recommended safeguard measures, that is, quantitative restrictions on IPA imports. We are also looking at focusing on, having a special pharma grade IPA as we go along. And further in our specialty drive in the IPA business, we are also seeing a good response from our hand sanitizer, the Cororid, and the other disinfection products. And more recently, we also had a very good tender that we won from the Odisha government. And we have also received our first export order for supply of IPA USP grade from South Africa. Within the same chemical segment, we also serve the mining sector, and revenues from mining chemicals almost doubled compared to Q2 FY21. Here we are leveraging on a lot of specialty products, advanced technologies like drone and AI-based blast modeling to improve the productivity in the mines and infrastructure projects. As you are all also aware, the country is facing significant coal shortages, and with improving economic recovery, the demand for power and therefore coal is also poised to increase, and all of this bodes very strongly positively for our mining chemicals business. On the fertilizer side, we continue to find that our strategy of differentiation and crop-specific approach continues to give us good positive results. And our SmartTech sales notched up to 2.28 lakh metric ton during the first half. The industry witnessed a shortage of potash, unprecedented increases in prices on all the raw materials like ammonia, phosphate, etc. But with somewhere broad support of the government, the sector has performed well. We continue to adopt digital means of working and connected with around 4.5 lakh farmers through 12,000 farmer connect activities such as demo site, meetings, crop seminars, and others. So that connect to the farmers is, getting stronger, and that is building a good brand for us. Going forward, the southwest monsoon in the country recorded a normal rainfall during Q2, with which we are looking at full reservoirs for water, and with that we are looking at a even better Rabi as we go along. On the capex side, our ammonia plant construction activity at Taloja is in full swing, and we are looking at the progress as per the schedule, and are expecting to commission that plant by Q1 FY24. So from a broader perspective, going forward, we continue to single-mindedly focus on, number one, capturing value in our chain, which is where the ammonia project will, give us a good positive traction. Second is we continue to very strongly focus on this drive from commodity to specialty, or focus on the end consumers, and that is something that is going to give us, certainly improved margins and also certain strong brand creation. And in the near term, we are looking at better efficiencies and debottlenecking to help us, enhance capacity and extract maximum value in the near term. So with these, I would say broad overview, let me hand over to Mr. Amitabh Bhargava, our CFO and President Finance, who can then give you a detailed financial overview, and then of course I will be available for further clarifications and answers to your questions. Amitabh?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mehta. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining the Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals conference call to discuss the Q2 FY22 results. Our financial performance during the quarter remained positive, as Mr. Mehta was mentioning, supported by our diversified product offerings and value-focused business model. During Q2 FY22, we reported a total operating revenue of rupees 1,793 crores, an increase of nearly 28% compared to same period last year. Our operating EBITDA increased by 9.8% YOY to rupees 212 crores in Q2 FY21 at FY22, with margins of 11.8 during the quarter. There's been sharp increase in key raw material prices YOY in Q2. Ammonia was up by approximately 158%. Phosphate acid was up 70%. RGP, that is propylene, up by 53%. Despite these adverse movements of key raw material prices, our better utilization levels during the quarter and so sales volumes resulted in improved financial performance. Our net profit grew by 15.9% YOY to rupees 93 crores in Q2. Finance costs were also reduced by 11.7% YOY during the quarter, driven by better working capital management and conversion of IFC's FCCB Tranche 1. We have generated approximately 648 crores of cash from operations and working capital management during first half of FY22. Net debt was further reduced by approximately 205 crores during H1. There's been significant improvement in leverage ratios, with net debt to equity improved from 0.9x or 91x in H1 FY21 to 0.53x in H1 FY22. DFPCL successfully raised, as Mr. Mehta was also mentioning, 510 crores through a qualified institutional placement of equity shares in October 21. Leading domestic as well as foreign institutional investors participated in the issue, which included Small Cap World Fund, Government Pension Fund Global, Axis Mutual Fund, Fidelity, Avendus, and Society General, among others. During the quarter, our manufactured pharma specialty chemicals business recorded a revenue of 374 crores, an increase of 46% compared to Q2 FY21. Manufactured assets for the quarter recorded a revenue of 208 crores, an increase of 94% compared to Q2 last year, and manufactured IPA recorded revenue of 167 crores, an increase of 12% YOY. Due to the decreasing availability of various downstreams of nitric acid from China and the resulting higher pricing, nitric acid demand and prices are expected to stay strong in Q3. In the short term, demand for hand sanitizers and disinfectant products are also expected to rise. Manufactured mining business recorded a revenue of 373 crores, an increase of about 100% during the quarter. We recorded highest ever second quarter sales of ammonium nitrate melt with 74% YOY growth. High density ammonium nitrate sales volume grew by 51% as supported by a combination of fixed price short-term agreements and increasing prices of imported ammonium nitrate due to the availability concerns from exporting countries. With improving economic recovery, the demand for power and therefore coal is expected to increase. In addition, with an increase in infrastructure activity, demand for cement and rock aggregates are likely to increase. All these factors should result in increased explosive demands in mining and infrastructure segments, and in turn on our mining chemical products. Our value-based business model in crop nutrition business, it resulted in revenue growth of 15.8% to rupees 802 crores in Q2. NP and NPK recorded a revenue growth of 30.9% to 687 crores, and Bensulf sales increased by 37% to rupees 21 crores in Q2 FY22. Despite year-over-year increase in major raw material prices, our strategically oriented initiatives, which range from crop-specific products to farmer-focused marketing, should help us grow our market share and profitability. During the quarter, our IPA plant operated at capacity utilization of 101%, and both acids and TAN operated at 83% and 88% respectively. As you might recall, in earlier quarters, I had made this point that last year we got affected by COVID, particularly our operation and maintenance, and the operating leverage that we were sitting on at the beginning of the year. It's evident that we have, sort of taken advantage of that in this quarter and in the first half of this year. In the crop nutrition segment, NP and NPK plants operated with utilization levels of 77%, and Bensulf plant operated at 66% utilization level. The available capacity across our plants provides us, headroom for future growth potential. We still have a good margin left as far as capacity utilization is concerned. We remain confident of continuing our growth trajectory while extending full support to our customers, suppliers, and other valued stakeholders. With all the three sectors, that is our industrial chemicals, mining chemicals, and fertilizers, are strongly aligned to overall economic growth in India, and with the Indian economy expected to perform better in the coming quarters, our segments are expected to be benefited from the same in the coming quarters. With this, we would be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Thank you. The first question is from the line of Vishal Pratap from VP Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. I have one question on technical ammonium nitrate. So, I understand we supply ammonium nitrate to solar industries as well as TAN to coal mines. And then I also understand that solar industries supply their products to coal mines. So, could you help me understand what is the difference between what we provide and what solar industries provides?
So we have three different products in technical ammonium nitrate. One is ammonium nitrate melt, which is the liquid ammonium nitrate. The second one is high density ammonium nitrate. High density ammonium nitrate essentially is in solid form, and therefore it helps transport it for a longer distance. But for shorter distance, to the extent that the customer end also has the storage facility, we supply the TAN in melt form. So in a way, AN melt and HDAN are substitute of each other. One is in solid and the other is in liquid form. Both these products go in the emulsion-based explosives, which our customers like Solar and others, they essentially convert these two products into emulsion-based explosives, which in turn are used for mining activity. While the low-density ammonium nitrate can be directly, put down the hole, and you can add add the fuel oil on top of it, and you can, with the help of detonators, you can detonate. So in a way, LDAN can be directly used in mines. It also is then converted into certain explosives which are different from emulsion-based explosives. So essentially, in summary, HDAN and AN melt is used by or supplied to our customers to be in turn converted into emulsion-based explosives, while low-density ammonium nitrate can directly be used as explosives in the mines. You can directly use it as with the addition of fuel oil. You can directly blast in the mines, so it doesn't have to go through the intermediary customers. And then it can also be converted into certain explosives which we call NFO, ammonium nitrate fuel oil. So those explosives are different from emulsion-based explosives that our customers like Solar make.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, right. So if I'm Coal India and I'm trying to buy an explosive, so when will we buy from our company, Deepak, and when will I buy from Solar? And what's the difference?
So Coal India, depending on their requirement, can either tender for emulsion-based explosives, or in certain limited quantity could even directly tender for LDAN, low-density ammonium nitrate. Essentially, in India, LDAN is very sparsely used in coal mining. Particularly, Coal India has just started using it on commercial scale only in Q4. Before that, they did not have the experience of blasting through LDAN. And to that extent, prior to that, 100% of their requirement was met through emulsion-based explosives. Now from Q4 onwards, after they have tested it on a commercial scale, depending on their requirement, they can tender for LDAN-based explosives. But India, given the manufacturing capacity of emulsion-based explosives and explosives in general, which are largely emulsion-based, particularly in the coal mine and public sector coal mine, would continue to remain, sort of largely be serviced by emulsion-based explosives. But like I said, Q4 onwards, when the Coal India subsidiaries have tested on commercial scale the LDAN-based explosives or blasting, they, depending on their requirement, can tender separately for LDAN-based explosives.
So, if I try to compare emulsion-based explosives and LDAN, so which is more efficient? If efficiency is measured in terms of money spent?
So fundamentally, while LDAN per ton basis can be priced or maybe priced more at a rupees per ton basis at a higher level at H10 or ANML, though that also keeps changing depending on the demand supply situation. But when it comes to for the same blasting requirement, generally speaking, LDAN-based explosives turn out more efficient in terms of the quantity that is used and the general efficiencies that you get in blasting. Because blasting also, depending on, so when you blast, if the overburden comes out in uniform, let's say shape, the whole processing of or removal of overburden is additional cost that is incurred by mines. And so therefore mines tend to look at their overall cost, not just the explosive cost, but end-to-end cost. And those costs can turn out to be more expensive because LDAN-based explosives or blasting is more measured. It has certain efficiency in terms of the outcome of overburden on it. So that's how it works. In generally, it can work more efficient.
Okay. And last question, sir, from my side. So, majorly, technical ammonium nitrate we supply to the end users, or we supply to explosive manufacturers like Solar?
So like I said, HN and ANML, which are out of the total portfolio are a substantial part of our product basket. They are supplied to intermediaries, the emulsion-based explosive manufacturers, while LDAN can be directly supplied to the mines.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Reminder to all the participants, to ask a question, you may please press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. The next question is from the line of Sharon, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. My first question is regarding the ammonia. Ammonia, which plant capacity is in progress, whether it's the green ammonia or what is exactly, because government is going to make a mandatory that for the fertilizers, green ammonia should be utilized, and the green ammonia comes from the power used from the renewable sources.
Yeah, so our ammonia is based on natural gas, and to that extent there is CO2 emission. Now, what we are trying to do is that we are talking to various CO2 users, including the upstream oil and gas industry, and to the extent the CO2 generated along with ammonia can be utilized for purposes where CO2 can be gainfully consumed rather than emitted in the environment, released in the environment. To that extent, while it is not green ammonia, it could get the shade of blue ammonia or whatever the terms used. But as of now, our ammonia, as much as the ammonia produced in the country, pretty much everywhere by all the players, is based on natural gas and therefore is not part of green ammonia.
Okay. And in case in the future, if required, is Deepak ready to consume renewable energy and produce the green ammonia in the same plant?
See, as of now, it is green ammonia has two components to it. One is the power that you are consuming, but renewable power consumed is then used for hydrolysis of water, and that's how you generate hydrogen. And then you take nitrogen from the air, and that's how you combine nitrogen and hydrogen to make ammonia. So it has the element of not just using the power in renewable form, but it has that power should be then used through hydrolysis of water to generate to hydrogen. While in our case, the whole process, KBR process through which we are producing ammonia, are going to produce ammonia, is through natural gas route, and therefore there is a fundamental difference. It's not just the power consumed, but it's the whole process end to end that makes it green ammonia.
Okay, sure. And the second question is the ammonia capacity is going to be around 500 plus tons, right? I think that's a year, 500 ton per year, right?
500,000 tons.
Yeah, 500. Okay. And 500 tons. So basically, and there was a mention that there is going to be a savings of around $70 to $80 just from the logistics. So can I assume that $70 is like into the Indian rupee, whatever it comes, and then plus into the 500 ton, roughly it is going to be 200 to 300 crore per year straightforward savings from that strategy?
Yeah, so we have sort of explained this earlier as well, and I'll just repeat that. So one is the logistics part of the saving, which your numbers are broadly correct, $70 to $80, and whatever ammonia that we produce, we save that much in the logistics if you compare it with, let's say, FOB Middle East. There are two other advantages of producing it locally. One is that the whole process of ammonia generation also is exothermic, meaning that it produces additional heat. Now, and that heat is something that we can use because it's right across our plant, so we can use that for
So we are unable to hear you.
I'm sorry, there is.
Sure.
So what I was saying is that therefore there is additional savings that we have of heat that we can generate, and to that extent our heat consumption in our main downstream plant, there could be saving, and that saving could be anywhere between $10 to $15 per ton worth of ammonia in terms of the steam production. The third one is where our manufacturing facility has been granted a ultra mega project status by Government of Maharashtra, and there 75% of our capex in ammonia would be we'll get reimbursement of basically state GST until we recover about 75% of our capex. So, and that's the additional savings that we make year on year. So there are these three elements of saving that would accrue to us once we produce it across our downstream.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great information. So when roughly this will get completed in the year of 2023?
So our mechanical completion is expected by March, April, and I think in a matter of 4 to 6 weeks we can start commercial production.
Okay. And roughly in a year, in the year when it starts producing the in-house ammonia, that year roughly what will be the savings, rough amount, like 500 crore or something?
So, like I think I've talked about all three elements.
Sure.
So we can just do a backup on the calculation.
Yeah. And one last question. Just would like to know the big customers from all the sectors, from agriculture and industrial chemical. If you would like to give some names of big customers and any recent addition in the customer list.
In which sector are you asking this question?
Both agri and the industrial chemical and pharma. Just would like to know any big customers you have and any recent addition to the customer list.
So in our mining chemical, we have customers like Solar Industries, Special Blast, Ideal Industries, Indian Oil Corporation, Singareni Collieries. These are some of our large customers as far as the TAN or mining chemical is concerned. As far as the asset is concerned, we have RC Industries, Deepak Nitrite, Panoli Intermediates. These are some of the customers. In case of IPA, pretty much the entire gamut of pharma companies, Aurobindo Pharma, Dr. Reddy's. These are all, Sun Pharma. These are all our customers in IPA.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your time and all the best for the future.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rajan Thakur from Ruchi Oyster Mushroom. Please go ahead.
Hi. My question was with regards to the fertilizer business. With the raw material prices, there should be an increase in our fertilizer costs as well. So, will farmers be able to purchase the same quantity of fertilizers before, and how we can manage this?
Your voice was not clear. Can you repeat the last line? I got your point that there is an increase in raw material prices, but what's exactly your question?
Hi. Yeah. So my question was, we know there's an increase in the raw material prices, and subsequently, our fertilizer product costs will also increase. So are we expecting the farmers to will the farmers be able to purchase the same quantity of fertilizers before, and how are we managing this?
So essentially, as you know, the increase in raw material prices, typically there are government also, depending on the raw material prices, looks at the NPK nutrient-based subsidy. So government did one increase in May of this year, based on some of the increase that had happened compared to the previous year raw material prices. Whatever other than the government, nutrient-based subsidy, rest of the prices are essentially depending on the market, depending on the competition and the way industry increases or passes on those prices. We also increase our prices of our products. Overall, a combination of the two is what government as well as the industry tries to create balance. And to that extent, for a brief period till the prices are passed on to the farmer, there could be some absorption that industry has to do. But eventually, if the raw material prices are sustainably at a higher level, these prices do get passed on to the farmer. But as you know, the NPK, nitrogen is also used in other fertilizer, and to that extent, the prices of other fertilizers, competing fertilizers, also tend to go up. So in that sense, the parity between other fertilizers and complex fertilizer is maintained. My colleague Mahesh is also there. Mahesh, do you want to add anything to this?
No, Abhi, I think you already covered that. I think there are two. One is that in the May, government announced nearly 14,000 crore additional subsidy by virtue of NBS, nutrient-based subsidy. Again, there was a second infusion done in October, which will impact next quarters. So both the effect cost covered through subsidy as well as partial pass-through in the market has been able to support. The consumption hasn't declined. As we talk about H1, consumption has been nearly at the previous year level. Also, we also deal into non-subsidized fertilizers, which is about 15% of our total portfolio. And in the non-subsidized portfolio of the fertilizers, we have been able to pass through the increased cost. These are efficient fertilizers used through the drip irrigation. They are anyway lower use. So the use rate per acre for water-soluble fertilizers is much lower than the bulk fertilizers. So there, and high-value cash crops are using those, where we also know that India has a lot of fruits and vegetable requirement, where farmers have been able to absorb the cost as the cost has increased for the non-subsidized fertilizers.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhijit Akella from IIFL Securities. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for taking my questions. I had one on the chemicals business first. So in the context of your commentary about the robust demand outlook for mining chemicals as well as the pharma segment and specialty chemicals. So in that context, would it be fair to assume that we can more than pass on the increases in ammonia costs in the second half of this year as the demand seasonally picks up? And if you could just give us some help in understanding, I mean, how realizations in those businesses are trending and how we should expect margins to trend in the next couple of quarters.
So Abhijit, one fundamental aspect about these sharp changes that have happened in raw material prices, and I'm sure you would also be observing that, is that a lot of this has been very sharp in a very short time frame. And therefore, the first assumption before anyone can comment on H2 is to even one has to come to a conclusion whether the prices, though they have gone up already so much, would they remain at this level or would they go further up? That itself is something that today it's very difficult to predict how far further up these raw material prices can go. And so that is very fundamental to any prognosis that one can or an estimate one can make to the margins. That said, I think in general, what we are seeing is that if you look at our product by product, Acid has certain contractual provisions where the raw material prices are passed through in our long-term contracts. In short run, we are also seeing, because of in general shortage and the China factor, the acid demand has also gone up, and to that extent, in the spot market, the price realizations have improved, and that would hopefully mean that the increase in ammonia prices would our ability to pass that on in acid, partly through contractual structure and partly through good realizations in spot market would be better. So that's as far as acid is concerned. As far as TAN is concerned, there again we've seen that even the fertilizer grade ammonium nitrate that comes into the country and competes with the local production has also seen increase. Again, Black Sea prices have gone up. Now, whether they keep in sync with the sharp increase that we're seeing month on month in ammonia, or would they have certain level of lag, would really decide whether the pass through is proportionate or more than proportionate. Very, very difficult to predict at this stage how quickly each of these, not just the raw material, but their response in the finished good products prices will reflect. But generally speaking, I think H1, though in H1 itself our prices raw material prices have gone up, we've seen that mining chemical business or TAN has withstood those prices, raw material prices, and the finished good prices seem to have reflected that increase. IPA is the other, I think, product where we are seeing, obviously, compared to last year and even quarter on quarter, there's been pressure on the margins because on one hand, propylene prices are going up. There is acetone-based, more of acetone-based IPA is coming into the country, and to that extent, there is a pressure on IPA margins, and this is what we had anticipated as well. In the beginning of the year also, we had said that we don't expect the margins to sustain at last year's level. The DGTR's quantitative restriction that DGTR has recommended, I think that should help to an extent in getting better realizations, because a lot of the acetone-based IPA that was coming into the country, if the quantitative restrictions come on that IPA and most of the IPA is then propylene-based IPA, it would improve the realizations for IPA, and in general the ability to pass on the propylene or raw material prices there would get better. So that's really the commentary on all these three products. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. So, I mean, in a nutshell, we are not, too concerned on the margin front. We do believe that the demand trends are healthy enough to permit us to pass on any input cost increase in general.
Demand trends are certainly very, very encouraging. But the point I just made is that the increases in raw material prices month on month and sometimes week on week have been sharp, and to that extent it's very, very difficult to predict for the entire quarter or second half. We'll see how it shapes up.
Sure, understood. And the second one is on the fertilizer business. Given this volume pressure because of rising prices, etc., does that sort of delay your plans of achieving full capacity utilization in that business? I believe you had plans to do that in the next 2 years or so. So does that push that back, or do you think it's still achievable? And in terms of the margin targets that you had for yourself, how do you see that shaping up in the context of this industry scenario?
I think the answer again is I would say how far this raw material cycle would continue is where a part of the answer would lie. But we don't expect that is going to fundamentally change the capacity utilization plan, because if the prices or these raw material prices are sustainable, either government would intervene in terms of increasing the subsidy, or the entire industry would have to look at changing the market prices. And to that extent, we don't expect that fundamentally there is any demand destruction that will happen in complex fertilizers. And
maybe I can add to that if you allow. So that's the industry view, and please note that our CMD and CFO quarter after quarter we are explaining that we are moving away. We have completely moved away from commodity business. In fertilizer, we have moved into value-added differentiated products, and these differentiated products are more efficient. We have introduced manufacturing technology, which enhances nutrient uptake, which is called nutrient analog technology. So we are able to differentiate ourselves and add value to the farmers, increasing their yield by the same product. So we are actually creating higher preference for our brand used by our consumer farmers, and as well as we are introducing complete crop specific or let's say more balanced products in our portfolio, which will be much more efficient for the farmers from value perspective. So those two things coupled with the industry overall scenario, as you know, that subsidized fertilizer also takes care of NBS rates. So both put together would help us go sustainably.
Got it. No, that's helpful. Thank you so much. One last thing, and I'll come back with anything more. The CapEx in the first half has been about 309 crores. Is there any rough number we have in mind for the second half? How much we expect to spend on all the projects put together?
So we have given guidance for next, I think about 6-7 quarters. I wouldn't have the. So if you look at, what we are saying is that between Q3 of FY22 to Q1 of FY24, one is we would complete the ammonia, which means there is balance about 2,500 odd crores of CapEx for ammonia that will take place in these 7 quarters. Also, roughly about anywhere between 700 to 900 crores of CapEx on the TAN capacity. A TAN new plant would also be there in this 7 quarters. So one quarter number is a little difficult. 1 or 2 quarters is because our TAN construction has not yet started. We are sort of in the fag end of getting all our approvals in place and the financial closure. So to that extent, while we have more certain about ammonia, TAN we'll know. I think by December or January we would know what kind of balance CapEx is expected till March. In TAN I mean. So therefore we've given guidance more at the next 6 to 7 quarters as opposed to quarter on quarter.
Understood. Thank you so much and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we'd like to remind our participants to please limit their questions up to 2. If you have a follow-up question, we request you to please rejoin the queue. We move to the next question from the line of Bhavya Shah from Girik Capital. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thanks for taking my question. In Q2 press release, we have mentioned that we had a lower than planned production of fertilizer due to MOP shortage. So just if you can throw some light on, are we facing the same issues in Q3 and are we facing shortage in any raw material other than MOP in fertilizer?
No, I think by now the almost sort of non-availability of MOP for a long period, that phase is over. So as such, raw material availability is not really hampering anything. The prices of each of these raw materials and therefore production cost and overall market pricing is a factor that we need to obviously we'll be reviewing or rather we will be tracking month on month. So that's still one area that we need to watch out for. But as such, raw material availability is no longer an issue.
And my second question was that this quantitative restriction in IPA is already in place, or is there any final order left to be published in Gazette or anything like that?
The implementation of that, as to how that would be implemented, is a work in process.
Okay.
Because it has to be certain source specific restriction, port specific restriction. All of those, the nitty-gritties of implementation is something that is being worked out.
Okay, understood. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal Pratap from VP Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. So I have 2 questions again. If I look at the history of Deepak Fertilizer in last 32 years, except 91-92 when we had unfortunate incidents of fire and all, where we struggled for a few years, we have been prudent capital allocators and we avoid taking undue risk. But if I look at what we are doing now, in like 4,300 capex for ammonia, And then we are talking about TAN, where we'll have a lot of capex. So do you not think that 5,000 crores of debt on our balance sheet will be a risky proposition?
I'm not sure where the 5,000 crore number comes from, but yes, the question, I think if I get the essence of the question, is that these two large capex is being done together, whether that's a risk or not. See, essentially, if you look at ammonia, in fact, I would flip the point and I would say that if we don't have our own ammonia, given the large ammonia requirement, because the fundamental nature of our business or fundamental raw material that is required in our business, because we are in nitric acid, NPK fertilizer and TAN, all three of them require ammonia. The scale is going to a level where relying on logistics, particularly right from Middle East to JNPT whole infrastructure, the transportation of that through road to our plant, and all the, not just the logistics uncertainty and issues in terms of damages and the certain frequent disruption, but also the whole environmental footprint of this logistics is something which for a long time we've debated internally, and we've come to a conclusion that that's not a sustainable operation for the size of the operation that we have. And therefore, ammonia, while the capex involved is large, no doubt about that, but without having our own ammonia, we would have been running a far more risk in terms of sustainability of our operation for the size of our operation. As far as ammonia, now if you look at the current, and I think we've gone through, in last 2 years, we've gone through certain delays in land acquisition, but as we stand today, we have all the statutory approvals. The progress on the ground is only now the physical construction of, just the construction part, because nearly 95% of the equipment is with us, the land is with us, all the approvals are with us. So it's only civil and mechanical construction that needs to happen on the ground. So as such, if you look at it, just the implementation risk is now substantially behind us. That said, yes, it would mean that there's a large capex and therefore proportionate debt. But debt also, if you see, we are actually even today, as we have almost about 1,800 crore of implementation that we have done, we have drawn less than 50% of that by way of debt, and we have used our internal accruals or our internal cash to fund the balance. And therefore, while in the base case, yes, we are planning to fund this project with say 60-40 debt equity and TAN with 70-30 debt equity. We may, depending on the cash accruals and the cash position we have, we may improve on this debt equity, number one. Number two, if you see the profile of this, a new project or any expansion, one huge risk that is there in any new project is the demand side of it, whether you will be able to place that product in the market or not, and what would be your capacity utilization. And that's where 100% of this is for captive consumption. And I've already spoken about the reasons why we believe that without having our own ammonia, we would have run a much higher risk on the sustainability. We don't believe that there is much risk that's left to be addressed in ammonia. We've gone through that phase, I think, in the last 2 years. As far as TAN is concerned, again, it's largely an import substitution. We have the land in place. Most of the statutory approvals are going to be with us. And to that extent, again, this is a product where we have quarter on quarter we have done well. There is a huge gap that is emerging in terms of import, and this product again is going to be used as as import substitution. And this business, we've been market leaders. We know end to end. We've done this, this business. We've been there for more than 3 decades. So again, the risk is it's not some unrelated diversification. It's not something that for which we have to create market, but it's a ready market. We have to substitute the import. And to that extent, I think the risk, while the capacities no doubt are large, but risk, if we talk about the risk, we believe that the risk is manageable.
Right, Amitabh. So, sir, I think you have been very clear about this in the past calls, so I really appreciate that. My question was more from doing parallel capex in ammonia as well as TAN, rather than doing back-to-back, where once we are done with ammonia and then we do TAN. And that is where my question was. If you could share your thought on that, that would be great.
So ammonia, if you look at it, we are sitting in November. We would complete ammonia in another 15 to 16 months, say March, April of 2023. TAN, we are yet to start the construction, but we have the land at basic, all the statutory approvals, and that's at 28 to 32 months of roughly 28. If you see even roughly the implementation or completion of this is three quarter apart from each other. So overlap, if you see, would be I would say 4-5 quarters maybe, and to that extent they are completely overlapping with each other or coinciding. There is anyway a gap that is there. While we have another 15-16 months left for ammonia, TAN, after we start the construction, it would be another 32 odd months. So even from a cash flow perspective, as we would be implementing TAN, our ammonia, the advantage of having our captive ammonia would start accruing to us from quarter 1 of FY24. So I think there is that I mean, it's not a complete overlap. There is a gap between completion of these two, and to that extent, we think we are fairly good place to manage this.
Okay, and we have taken some land on JNPT recently. So is that for storing LNG?
JNPT land.
Right. There was a press release from JNPT, and our name came up that we have taken land there for storage or something.
Not. We had at some point in time we had bid for additional storage capacity, but we have not followed through in terms of going ahead with the tank construction, etc. So we had. I'm not aware which land are we talking
Okay,
about.
that's fine. Last question, sir. If I look at Coromandel, they backward integrated into phosphorus, because I think there is a lot of raw material risk there as well. So, in I think, is it important to have at some point in time in future to have backward integration in phosphorus, or that's not very important for us?
No, it does create optionality. Where today we are entirely dependent on phosphoric acid. If you have the backward integration, you have the optionality of using rock phosphate, convert that into phosphoric acid, and then use it in your NPK. So it does make sense to have the optionality. But today, given that ammonia goes into 3 of our products and not just the fertilizer, ammonia made better sense for us today. For the scale of operation, and ammonia, we've also got certain advantages as I was mentioning, both on the energy side and also the ultra mega status that we got from Government of Maharashtra. So from that perspective, ammonia made sense for us. But phosphoric acid, any backward integration in phosphoric acid would certainly create an optionality.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Samir Joshi, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thanks for giving me opportunity. what is the percentage of fixed price contract as compared to variable price contract across various business, and whether and what is the tenure of these fixed price contract, and is there any chance that because of increase in raw material prices or decrease, we can pass on the increase to in case of fixed price contracts? Thanks.
So one is fundamentally these numbers are not fixed. They depend on the commitments that our customers want and commitment at any stage we are committing to our customers. But typically in let's say today we would be roughly about 50% as far as the contract and spot is concerned in the TAN segment. And in the asset segment, this number, fixed number in the CNA varies from 60 to 70% and balance 20 to 30% or say 30-35% can be in the spot segment. But like I said, these are not numbers that one needs to take it on. These could be numbers which are dynamic.
Okay, because I was estimating that by which quarter the increase in raw material prices will be taken care in pricing of final products.
So spot also tend to spot is typically in general are at premium over fixed prices at which we have committed to our long-term customers. So if we do pass on, or if fixed price contractors have the ability to pass on raw material prices, the same, given that spot is at premium over long term, it also has the ability to pass on raw material prices.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Amitabh Bhargava for his closing comments. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you so much for your participation and all the incisive questions. For any further queries or clarification, please do get in touch with our investor relationship team. Thank you so much again, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Antique Stock Broking Limited, that concludes this conference call. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.